There are three critical skills that you have to have in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Number one is the ability to learn, to unlearn, to relearn. So skill number two is the ability to think critically. Third skill that I think is really important, and it doesn't seem like it, but...
All right, welcome to the Troy Kearns podcast. We talk all things real estate, business, and entrepreneurship. Today we've got an entrepreneur, a businessman, and a massive influencer, Chris Doe. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. My last name is actually pronounced Chris Doe, as in cookie dough.
I was going to ask you that, and then I figured I would get it right. So it's pronounced dough?
Dough, like cookie dough.
Cool. Where's that from?
It's Vietnamese last name.
Okay. That's awesome, man. So tell me a little bit about your story, Chris.
Well, I'm a refugee, first-generation immigrant from Vietnam. Left Vietnam in 1975. Came to America and then found my way eventually into graphic design. Went to school and studied it. And when I graduated, I found this new emerging field called motion design, where I got to make commercials and music videos for a living, which is something I thought I would do for the rest of my life. But 20 plus years into the industry, running my own company, I discovered this crazy thing called YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm 42 years old at the time. It's 2014. And a buddy, a college classmate of mine named Jose, said, let's go make some content. Let's teach people things. And I was really resistant to the concept. Obviously, we know what happened to that story.
Yeah.
Choosing to create content on YouTube changed the course of my life and my business.
Wow. Yeah. And how many subs? I think you had 2.4 million subs or something like that. 2 million?
Like 2.3, 2.4. We're getting close there. So yeah, 2.4 million subs, almost 1 million followers on Instagram, almost 500,000 on LinkedIn. And I did not set out to be an influencer or a thought leader of any sort. I was just like, I will try this thing. Let's see what happens.
I think it's helpful for those of you guys who are listening right now. You just like walked me through how to set up my studio on this new thing called Riverside, which you were extremely helpful for. So I think like that's like your DNA. And from what I was looking at your YouTube videos, they all are like helpful videos about how to improve yourself.
Yeah.
So and I think your mission statement is helping 1 billion people improve their lives, and that was very evident because you just helped one of those people before before this podcast, which was me.
Yeah.
So one of my best friends growing up was from Vietnam, and he was first generation here. And I got to know his name was Phong, and his sister's name was Phong, and he had another brother's name was Phong.
No.
And it was cool though. I spent like a trip with him down to New Orleans, and I really got to know like in a train with him, and then in a car with him for like 6 days, where I'm speaking English and they're speaking Vietnamese all around me the whole time, and I know that culture very well. And there's a lot of good stories that come from Vietnam about immigrants here, and it sounds like we've got another one now. What surprised the hell out of me that you just said is that you're just doing the math real quick. You're 50 something years old.
I'm 51. Yeah. Good on the math there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you started YouTube, what some may consider late, but it seems like it's like a fast break technology right here. So why did your journey start, and how did it blow up to the size it is right now, man?
It started because Jose, my former business partner, and we both have a passion for teaching, and he knew I was developing an education company. He already had one. So rather than us do this separately, we decided to join forces, and we started this company called The School. And it was a knowledge product. We were teaching people how to do UX design, user experience design. And in order to build any kind of awareness, we had to create content. So we had this product that we believed in, that we thought was transformative, but nobody's going to buy it if you don't create an awareness. So we used YouTube because he was used to creating content on YouTube. And so he was the veteran, he was the master, and I was the apprentice in this scenario. And so we started creating content, and at first the content sucked, as it always does, because we didn't prepare. I didn't know how to show up on camera. I'm socially awkward. I'm an introvert, and I'm a behind the camera talent, not in front of camera. And he's open, he's gregarious, he's an extrovert. So the two of us could not be more different as people. But somehow we made that kind of Oscar and Felix kind of odd couple energy work, and it worked for the first 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, people, it's kind of interesting. I'm totally introverted as well. I enjoy, teaching people. My passion is real estate. Your passion is basically a lot of different things. So, you know, as a guy who started an education program, right away I go to, like, I know there's a better way to teach what I'm teaching. Like, I've looked at that. So how do you design a good education program? What makes a good education program?
Okay, this is wonderful. I think we all have the answers already built into us. If we go back and look into our lives and just remember the people who had the greatest impact on us in terms of helping us to see ourselves or helping us to learn something, oftentimes it's a family member. That would be your first one. It could be your mom, your dad, your brother, your cousin, an uncle, somebody like that who helped you through just getting out of adolescence, right?
Right.
Oftentimes there's a teacher in junior high, in high school, or in college that taught you something. If you go back and revisit the lessons in which they structured and how they held the classroom, your attention and your interest, then you start to understand a little bit about the different teaching methodologies. And I think this is where it gets really interesting. Now, prior to me making videos on YouTube, I taught at a private art school for 15 years.
Oh.
And so I put in the reps. So it's not like, and I know some people see me on YouTube like, oh, you just started. I'm like, not really. I just started on YouTube. But before I was just in a classroom with like 8 to 10 students, and you cut your teeth and you learn different ways. Now, what I taught was design. I taught abstract thinking, conceptual thinking. And those are very hard subjects to teach to somebody.
Yeah.
Math is based on formulas. Science, physics are based on formulas. But as it turns out, creativity is also based on formulas. The formulas are a little bit more complicated, a little bit more abstract, but they're still formulas. So whether it goes to writing music, architecture, or typography and design, there are formulas. And the point is to learn the formula. So you, as a practitioner of something, you know real estate, but let's pretend like you're a really good basketball player. Are you?
I'm decent. I mean, for a 46-year-old dude that has busted a bunch of ankles and stuff, I'm decent.
Okay, let's just use that, okay? Because it's something that most people can relate to. So if you were to teach someone, a college student, a child, how to play basketball, you're probably not going to give them a book and say, read the book on how to play basketball, because almost no one does that.
Yeah.
You learn to play basketball by playing basketball, and you might break it down to component skills. First, you just need to learn ball management, ball handling. So you go through a lot of dribbling skills between cones, passing, basic things like pivoting. Then you go into learning how to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Right. So you go through all these kinds of things, and they're discrete skills. So you as a teacher, if you want to improve your traction on social media, your engagement, your followers, you have to learn how to be a better teacher. So you chunk down the skills into its smallest component, and you teach that. And through drills and practice, they have mastery. And what they do is through the collection of individual skill sets that they're not sure how they're related, you as instructor put it together and like, oh my gosh, I'm a much better basketball player now. And that's the gift of teaching.
Chris, you're a smart guy. You're obviously very well studied, very articulate. You speak well. You, when you look at your website, you can tell that you have an insane amount of attention to detail. It might be, some might label it OCD. I think it's an excellent skill set. Where does that come from?
You know, it's one of the things I try to teach my own children. I have 2 adult children at this point, 20 and 17. And I try to get them to pay attention. The art of design and creation is the art of paying attention, to learn how to observe the world. And when you can do that, you start to collect ideas, and then you can translate that into something. Here's how I would describe it, right? Let's just say I told you somebody just walked into the room and you're going to draw their portrait. Let's just say you're a really good draftsperson and you have the skills to draw, but if you didn't pay attention, you have no idea how to draw. Was it a man? Was it a woman? Did they have short hair? Were they old? Or young? Did they have a hunch in their back? What was going on? So what we want to do is we want to be able to observe things. Now, my former lettering professor, Niels Lindstrom, would say something like this: you can't draw what you don't see. So the first step is to learn how to see. It sounds crazy, but you have to learn how to observe things.
Yeah, no,
so people,
what you're saying, like I'm visualizing it right now. So you're breaking through to me. So if you're listening right now, keep going. Yeah, this is good stuff.
So let's just say you're a communications expert. Very different field now. What does it mean to see as a communication expert? Well, you have to learn to observe tone, body language, micro expressions, and anything else that you can pick up, because as a communicator, you're picking up signals from the other person. You're processing that in real time and you're responding in real time. Now, you'll notice people who are on the spectrum who might have something like Asperger's, they have a difficult time reading expressions and how they're coming across to people. This is why if you're undiagnosed or you're not sure, someone with Asperger's will say sometimes very inappropriate, very direct things that might be borderline rude to a person who has the same social cues. So they don't have that ability. So if we take it to the opposite end of the spectrum, someone who's highly attuned, you might label them as highly empathetic. Yeah. I don't believe empathy is just feeling things. It's actually, I think their brain has an ability to process all the stimuli, the tone, the language, the micro expressions in real time, that they can feel the energy, but they're just really hyper observant, in my opinion.
Man, you described two people there, my wife and me. Like I might be described as having Asperger's. She said not in like a negative way, obviously, but like just being saying the most inappropriate thing at the most inopportune time. And then she is the person that just feels everybody's feelings. And I'm like, I don't even know how you do that.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Let me ask you this question.
Sure.
Because sometimes people think having Asperger's is a hindrance to integration into culture and building relationships. But I had a young man who worked for me who was a cinematographer, and I believe he has Asperger's, but he had an incredible skill. And I didn't know until later on. He's a cinematographer. So he would literally walk in front of the stage while the band is playing and film and not feel self-conscious at all. And I thought, my God, this guy's really brave. It's just he couldn't feel that it was awkward and weird for him to be standing there and the band's looking at him funny. The audience is looking at him funny because he doesn't feel any of it. Yeah. Now me, I'm more probably aligned to your wife. It's like, I can't get up on stage. This is really out of place. And if I were, I would start to sweat profusely and feel that intense heat of all these eyes and the inappropriateness of what I was doing as I was imposing on other people's enjoyment of what was going on. So if you have that ability to just drop into any situation and not feel that heat, I think that's an advantage in many instances.
Yeah, I think I feel, I think anybody feels pressure. I think we're all human beings, and like that warmth and that anxiety that you were just describing there is, it's amazing. You get up on a stage, you feel judged by your peers, all your insecurities jump to the top of your mind. The sweat goes on you, and you can really relive like a tragic moment. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was reading a book by a guy named Joe Dispenza, and it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And one of the things that he talks about is that we don't play future events in our head. We play what happened before and all the negative stuff that happened before. And so he's like, as you're trying to reprogram your brain, if you're breaking this down to like not incantations, but saying positive affirmations to yourself and believing them, manifesting it can kind of change that feeling, right?
Well, that's right, because most of what we believe is in our mind. It's part of our imagination, and our imagination can play tricks on us. We have the power to tell ourselves negative stories, which means we also have the power to tell very positive stories. Yeah.
But we tend to focus on the negative. People like it.
A lot of times.
Yeah. And fear is the biggest motivating, emotion. So we found that out through the dangerous words we're not supposed to say on the internet that just happened 2020 through 2022. But so when you started this journey, did you realize that it was going to, when did you realize it was getting big?
That's a good question. I think the first time I started to feel this was when I was at a fast casual restaurant that I go to all the time, and the people serving us behind the counter was like, "Hey, are you the guy that made that video?" I'm like, "Which video?" And they mention it. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm that guy." So now we're transcending what I think is our niche audience, which is a bunch of designers. I was teaching business skills, negotiation skills to creative people. And what I didn't realize at the time is it's highly applicable to all kinds of tradespeople. And so now I get recognized at the airport at the security line, or the customs person who's dealing with your tax refund, which is kind of like, that's interesting. The reach on tools or of the platforms on the internet is far and wide. So it spans different countries and different geographic and demographic breakdowns. So it's really interesting.
And that's just the people that are speaking up.
That's right.
I've had several people come up to me and talk to me and be like, are you that guy? But how many people are saying that in their head that aren't saying anything? They're like, yeah, you're that guy. So it's a cool thing. And it could be, there's some nasty people out there. We put a video out the other day about some people doing donuts in my parking lot, and it went viral, right? It was one of those weird little snippets that went viral. And I literally have gotten people that got so upset that I was mad at somebody vandalizing my property, Chris, that they were like, stop being a baby. And I actually got like a guy who told me to kill myself yesterday about the video. And I was like, geez, wow, that can set somebody off so bad. It's amazing how these emotions are the reason that videos take off and go viral and then move the needle. Like what you say, the words and the impact that they have. And that can play into the thumbnails that work. I was going to ask you help as somebody who, I think the journey of YouTube. Took me forever to get to 1,000. It took me forever to get to 100,000. Now I'm at like 126,000. I'm like, still like, I don't have any idea what I'm doing, And so like, what would your advice be for entrepreneurs who are trying to get on YouTube and grow?
I think I have general advice. And if you're trying to create content and grow, whether it's on LinkedIn, Instagram, or on YouTube, if you repackage information that's available on the internet, which is pretty much everything, without a perspective, without a lived experience, it can come across as pretty generic and prosaic. And this is not going to get you any attention. So the way that you do this is you can say, here's the best advice I've ever gotten. And it's something generic because everybody says something like that, right? And then you relate it to a real story so they know it's just not you reading a book and just regurgitating what you saw.
Yeah.
And I find that this is from Russell Brunson's book, .com Secrets. And he breaks it down as to be an attractive character, you need to have 4 components. You remember the 4 things?
No, I've got the book. I've got the book literally right here. Okay. So I can probably figure it out. But
there it is. Well, good. You seem like you're halfway through the book. Number 1 is you have to have some kind of backstory. And the backstory has to be relevant to what it is that you're trying to be known for. And if you take the example of, say, Tony Robbins, who is probably the biggest influencer currently, doing what it is that we do, his backstory, he tells his story really well. It's beautiful. Like it's Thanksgiving. His family doesn't have a lot. Somebody knocks on the door and wants to give them food. His dad chases him away. And he's sitting there thinking, Dad, why would you do that? Right. And then Tony walks down the street at the end of the block and the guy was still there. He gives him something. So that act of kindness, that generosity impacted him in a way that carries on throughout his whole life. So his motivation, his driver, his reason for being is from that moment of giving back and helping others. So that's part of his DNA. So you have to have a compelling backstory. Number 2 is you have to have character flaws. Yeah. This is a really important thing because we don't like perfect people.
Yeah.
The celebrities who have perfect teeth or are beautiful, who grew up in an affluent environment with famous parents, we hate on them so bad. If you sing, dance, and act, it's like we hate you even more. You seem to be too perfect. The reason being is most people do not identify as perfect. We identify as struggling. And if you read Pixar's 22 Rules of Storytelling, and they're the most successful studio of all time up until recently, the number 1 rule for storytelling, according to Pixar, is the audience admires characters more for their struggles than their triumphs.
Interesting.
So if you play back Pixar movies, you play back Disney movies, the ones that resonate with you, this is one of the reasons why many of the characters are abandoned, parentless, orphans. Something is going on with them because that struggle is what we use to tap into their story. Because at some point in our lives, even if you had it perfect in your life, there was a moment in time in your life where you felt like you didn't belong, you didn't have enough experience, you weren't beautiful enough, you weren't smart enough, whatever it was, and you felt like an outcast for a period of your time. So when we see a character like that, I think, form some kind of neural bond in that emotional pain, and we want to see how they resolve this because all stories are a life lesson for us to either learn from or to ignore. So number 2, you have to have character flaws. Number 3 is you have to have parables. You have to have stories from your life that you can draw upon that reinforce this narrative of who it is that you are. And we all have infinite number of stories. We're just not very good at observing those stories.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Number 4, and the one that I think we're alluding to in this conversation, is You have to be willing to be polarizing. I don't say the things I say to polarize our audience. I say it because I have a deep conviction. I believe this. I'm passionate about it. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine by me. I'm not here to say that everybody has one universal truth as an absolute idea, but this is my truth. I respect that you have a different truth, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, it's crazy when you say that. I did have a video that a short that hit 5.3 million views, and I literally described in my convictions why you will always be broke. And the first thing I said is you go to Starbucks every day, and people freaking went off. And it was stitched, and I wasn't trying to be polarizing. I had literally just taken a coaching class from somebody who taught TikTok, and he was like, go do this type of a video to give up your opinions. And the thing was like, it was another one that just hit people right where it was, as you said, polarizing, and they just reacted. So Mr. Beast and guys like that, they just understand every nuance of like the video and everything like that. When I try to look at their videos, I'm like, how do I make my videos go more viral? So when I listen to your 4 things, I'm like, by the way, I have read the full book. That's just me going through it and trying to build my emails out the correct way for the attractive character. Okay, so I was literally going in and typing out exactly how it's supposed to be. So I have the email sequence written out on that. But Russell Brunson is the godfather of, I've read the ClickFunnels, all the funnel books, all the expert books, and it's amazing how his journey started. And the Tony Robbins, I've actually been through the Unleash the Power Within and the other one, Business Mastery. Yep. And I burned my feet, by the way. It wasn't Cool Moss. And I never heard that story from him. So that's an interesting one. I didn't.
It's powerful. It'll make you cry. It's very powerful. If you search that story, you'll see. And I guess because he's so well known at this point, he's probably telling that story less and less. But I've listened to it a couple of times. It's a powerful origin story.
Yeah, so you've got a great story.
Did you ever want to invest in real estate? Did you ever want to live the life of your dreams? Did you want financial freedom? Did you want to break the generational curse? Did you want to help your parents out? Did you want to help your mom out? Maybe you work for a job that you don't like. They say there's only one reason to work a job, and that's to learn, right? If you're not learning at your job, you're just going through the motions, right? We have a free Facebook group, the Millionaire Mentorship Facebook group for real estate investing. Make sure you join. The link is in the description. If you want to schedule a free call with me and my team and you actually want to start, I would suggest you do so. We have helped hundreds of people change their lives, and all they had to do was get started. They booked a call with me and my team, and they got the ball rolling. And I'm so confident that if you don't get your first or next investment property within the first 90 days, you don't pay, and I'll give you $1,000 cash. That's how confident I am. Obviously, you got to take action. You can't just do nothing and expect that to happen, but that's life. Life's all about taking action. Make sure you give this podcast a 5-star review, share it with a friend, and take action.
What's your goal right now in business and with your current businesses?
My primary business is in education, and I've stopped doing client service work. So I don't do client work anymore. I'm blessed. It's my freedom date. It's December of 2018.
Awesome.
And we've been client free since then. So my primary motivation and drive and goal is to be able to, and I know this sounds like audacious, maybe borderline arrogant, self-important goal, but I want to change the way that we educate people, and specifically in private schools. So there's a pattern I've noticed here, that schools are set up to enroll students so that they can apply for a loan. It's one of these strange things that it's the only industry that I'm aware of where you can get a loan without having any real credit. And these private schools are going to sink you into the hundreds of thousands, maybe $250,000 in debt for a job that may not exist with skills that aren't going to qualify you to work. And this is going to create a massive problem. And it's already a problem today. Young people graduating probably will never own a home, will probably take their entire lifetime to pay down their debt, because that's after taxes that you're paying down your debt. And so it's going to take a really long time. This is a problem. So what I want to do, and because what I see is, okay, so if you're born into a wealthy family, if you have the good fortune of that, that means you go to the best schools, you live in the safest neighborhoods, you can get a tutor if you need it and support, and that's going to get you into a university that's one of the top ranked universities. And so then you get the best jobs, and this cycle continues over and over again.
Yeah.
So what happens is the divide between the haves and the have-nots gets even bigger, and we can see that in CEO pay. It's way out of proportion, more so than it's ever have in the history, right? It's like the top 25 people, the top richest 25 people make up more than the 80% of the rest of the population combined. Something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And that's inequality that's going to tip over and explode into some kind of revolution, I think. So what do we need to do? We need to create an educational system that isn't geographically linked, that is asynchronous. You can learn when you want, how you want, in the way that you want from remote places, and pay a fraction of what it would cost you to go to a private school. In this way, we arm people with knowledge and information that they can apply themselves to better their lives and the lives of their loved ones. That way, we can create what I believe is really important, this middle class that is built on this kind of American ideal. When the middle is healthy, the country is healthy.
For sure. And like, I think you'd agree right now, we are completely, like, there's so many people on one side and so many people on the other. And when you say that to me, it gives me goosebumps because, Chris, I do believe our education system is broken. When I went to college, it was for FOMO. It wasn't, and I paid my own way and I did all that stuff. And I'm like, that was the single biggest waste of money and time that I ever spent. I didn't get anything. I have a communications degree and I didn't learn anything. And I tell my kids, I'm like, if you're going to school and you want me to pay for it, because, you know, my kids are now what they're the privileged ones, right? I grew up unprivileged. I've fought the American dream, even though, you know, I did it for other reasons. But what you're saying really resonates with me. How are you going to do that?
I do it by enrolling others into my community, by experimenting and building the prototype. I'll tell you a story here real quick. The future, my education company would not exist if the people I was trying to help just agreed to take my help. So I teach at a private art school. I said, hey, should we be concerned about this thing called the internet and online education? And they're like, no, that's not something we worry about because we're at the top of the hill. I get it. So I'm like, I'm a little frustrated. So I'm going to stop teaching here. I'm going to just try to do this thing on my own. And then I go to an organization, a professional organization for graphic designers called the AIGA. And I said, oh, would you guys like help translating this to a more 21st century experience versus doing small studio visits and doing this over and over again? None of this scales. That we want your help. Cool. So I tried to help, but there was a level of like group thinking that just didn't allow me to move. And I'm like, 8 months later, I don't have an answer. So what am I going to do? And I really believe in this. And it's a rule I learned later in life, which is you're allowed to complain one time. And here I am complaining twice. I complained to the school I was teaching at. I complained to the organization I was a volunteer board member of. And I needed to do something about it. So stop complaining, deal with it, right? So I started the education company. So now we're doing this. And at first, there's a Gandhi saying something like they mock you, then they ignore you, and then they join you. And they're in the joining phase right now. Right? So we go through that entire arc. And so what we are going to do is we need to prove that this business model can work, create the operating system, that it's sustainable, that it's beneficial, that it's economically viable on both sides, that we reward students by getting the best teachers for the lowest price. We reward the teachers by creating intellectual property for them that they collect a royalty on for the life of the product. And this is a beautiful thing because as a teacher, you earn money when you teach. And when you don't teach anymore, you're kind of done. So what we've done is just moved them into the publishing model where we're the publishers, they're the authors, so they collect a royalty. And some of them send heartfelt, tear-jerking emails to me saying, you've done more for me than the institutions I've taught for the last 2 decades. The fact that I get a check from you every single month when I'm sleeping, when I'm eating, and it's something that I can gift to my children, I think we're doing a good thing. And so we'll do this. And if we can prove that this model works, that it's robust, that it's on par with what you're going to pay for, that might be 1/10 of the cost, then we just say, anybody that wants to use this, I'm not trying to protect this. I want you to use it, but we got to prove that it's going to work.
That's amazing. I mean, that gives me goosebumps just thinking about, I mean, you sound like you're trying to create a movement similar to like when the iPod came out, and it just revolutionized the music industry. People were like, if you remember, like it went from CDs and then you got the little MP3 players and then Steve Jobs came out and he's like, smash, we're going to just disrupt this whole industry. So your goal is to disrupt the education industry and almost become a producer giving royalties to the people who are providing their expertise.
Yes.
That's awesome. So, okay, 2 questions. How does somebody become one of your teachers, and how does someone become one of your students?
Okay, the teacher one's a harder answer to produce here. We're focused primarily on design and creative education for now. I think it's important for us to stay niche because otherwise we start to splinter into too many places. So we like people who are very charismatic, who've been teaching, who are dynamic teachers, who have experience. And those are the criteria. So anybody who's listening to this, if you're an educator and you're dynamic and you're thinking 21st century concepts and you've put your time on the mat, if you will, on the road, we'd love to talk to you. If we think you have, and it helps if you have a social following, because what we realize is if you don't have a social following, our audience like, well, who dis? Like they don't care. They just don't care. You could be the most brilliant teacher, but if you don't have that draw, all the work is on us to build an audience for you, right? Yeah. So you're not going to hit the sales that you need to make it viable for you. But to be a student, all you have to do is watch some of our videos, because most of the content is not gated. It's free. You can watch it and you can better yourself. And the goal is this. We produce, and I believe this, we produce better free content than people's paid courses so that you can level up and you can make some money. And when you do, we're not asking for a handout. Go back and buy another course or something such that you can level up, and you keep doing this and it keeps working for you. So we take the first step. We don't ask you to pay your tuition first and then promise to teach you. We teach you first. And this is why I think we have such a highly engaged audience, because literally this happens to me all the time, Troy. People come up to me and they said, 2 years ago, I was working minimum wage at Starbucks, since you use Starbucks. And he's like, last year I made $250,000.
Boom.
And then they give you a hug and we high five each other. Like, this is the mission in real life, manifested through people who apply what we say.
How
then
does
I
that
just
make you
say,
feel?
It makes me feel incredible.
Yeah.
You talk about like vitality of life, the fuel for life. This is it. When people genuinely come up to you, strangers that you don't know, who then profess to you how you've impacted their life for the better. And you think about, it's just not their life because they're connected. We're not islands. They might have a partner in their life. They might have children. They might have parents they need to take care of, or maybe somebody they care about, a friend is going through a really bad time. They can use that money to help people.
Yeah, people think money is the root of all evil, and the reality is you cannot have an impact if you're broke. Like you might be able to like throw some rocks through windows or stand and yell, but when you have money, you can change things, and that's a big thing to do. And that sounds like that's what you're doing. So from a YouTube standpoint, because YouTube obviously pays you for the content that you produce, has that been a game changer for you? I mean, based on the level of subscribers, I've looked at guys like Graham Stephan, who has a really good following and obviously posts the kind of money he makes. Mine has been, I think my best month ever was like $5,000, and that's when I had a video that go off. I mean, YouTube can be a game changer for people. Has that been the way you've achieved your financial independence in 2018?
No, and this might be shocking to you. It's probably the lowest form of of all the buckets that we have to make money. It's probably the lowest one on that totem pole. And I'll explain. Okay, I think the best we've ever done, I think, is something like maybe $350,000 or something like that annually. Now, that's a great lifestyle business. If you're an independent creator and you live in an area where that's a lot of money, that's going to sustain you, right? So we have creator friends that are living in India or parts of Asia that is more money than they'll ever need just from 1 year. Okay. Yeah. But last year we did $4.5 million, and the amount of ad revenue, we're talking about AdSense, it goes up and down depending on how healthy the advertising market is and your CPM. Yeah. Some channels get a lot more. So channels that talk about investment, real estate, finances, something like that, they have a high CPM. They're going to get $30 per 1,000 views. Yes. If you do video game streaming, you're going to get $2 per 1,000 views. So you're not going to be able to make it that way. And the logic is very simple. Advertisers know that people who are looking at finance, investment channels, and real estate have money. So the ad buys for that, the rates are much higher than they are for people watching video games, right? Yeah. We understand that. Yeah. But you're never going to get rich doing this. what Graham Stephan and other people are probably doing, they're doing a combination of AdSense and sponsored posts.
Yeah.
So when you have a big enough audience, and sponsors will say, we'll give you $30, $50, $100,000 if you review our product, if you talk about this. You do affiliate marketing so you can drive a lot of sales there through Amazon, through other affiliate programs that you might have set up. But those are all relatively small. We make the bulk of our money through coaching programs. We have a coaching community. It's like 500-ish people. They join that. They pay per month. And that's really where we make the bulk of our money. And then these educational products that we sell.
Yeah, I saw your mastermind. It looked like it was dope. We just had ours. I saw the pictures on your website. They looked awesome. It seems like you got a really tight-knit community. You obviously care about your mission, Chris. I can tell. For people who are trying to follow your journey, how do they find you?
You can find me almost on every social platform. I'm at the Chris, CHRIS, Doe. Doe is spelled D-O. So you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn. Of course, you can find me also on TikTok. On YouTube, the company's name is called The Futur, and The Futur is spelled without an E. It's Futur.
Where'd you come up with that name?
Well, my former business partner helped me come up with it by accident.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, we were going through a tough emotional period in the breakup, and he was ranting, and we were doing, I think, a proxy argument through the web because we had this shared community, and he would say something about me but not use my name. Yeah. And I would say something. We're a little childish, right, where we're doing this.
Okay. We all are.
And then he's a brilliant mind. So he was writing about like kind of this rallying manifesto about how everything's going to be different in the 21st century, that designers are going to have a seat at the table, that we're not going to be the order takers. And he said, in the future, this is going to happen. In the future, he kept saying, it was kind of annoying me. I'm like, okay, I'll just use that as a name then. So when you say in the future, we'll just take over the future, because you're saying in the new company that I'm forming, these things are going to happen. And then, so I just used it.
Oh, amazing. That's cool. So that breaking up with a partner, that could be a tough thing.
Yep.
It's like a girlfriend, right? You have this relationship, and then, somebody stops respecting the other person, or this person loses value. Maybe we start as friends, and then we realize we're better friends than we were. But that whole dynamic there is a tough one. I think that, straightforward, Asperger's type of communication is, and empathizing with that person's situation is something that you got to do in order to facilitate that. And it's cool that you guys now have had enough time, it sounds like, where you guys have a healthy relationship, right?
That's right. I think it's less than, it's more than a girlfriend, boyfriend breaking up. It's a marriage, and it's a divorce, and it's messy because there's a business entanglement and assets, and then community and our own identities after, and mutual friends. But I knew that the direction we were heading was going to destroy our friendship. And I thought, this company's not worth it. Let's break up. Let's chop up the assets evenly. You get what you want. I get what I want. And let's continue to be friends and not let this destroy everything we've built together in the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's cool. Shows your maturity, Chris. And I'm glad that worked out for both of you guys. And it's evident by the success that you're having both on YouTube and both with your personal business that it's gone amazing for you. And I'm excited for your education and stuff like that. What would you tell somebody who is, I guess like almost like your son? You said you have 2 children.
Yes.
What are you telling your children to do right now to advance them? And how do you see the future going? You kind of remind me, even though you're older than me, you remind me a little bit, your energy, of like Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm really like fascinated by that individual. I think he's just so sharp with his tongue and so articulate. And I believe you are the same. You've said a lot of things on here that are very, very well thought out. And it's something that, personally, I aspire to have that sort of vernacular and that sort of command of your language. You're just really well thought out and analytical. And I enjoy that about you, Chris. But what would you tell your children right now with the things that are going on in the country and kind of like the American dream almost being a thing of the past a little bit?
I'm an eternal optimist. I believe that even when there are challenges and obstacles in front of us, that there are opportunities in disguise. That when an industry shifts, that means a new industry is about to emerge. So let's talk about AI. AI is going to be one of the most disruptive, if not the most disruptive technologies that humanity's ever seen. Yeah. It's going to create massive job displacement. But within all that turmoil and that the rubble that you have to comb through, you're going to find beautiful opportunities. ChatGPT founder announced recently the ability to build your own apps. And so they just destroyed all these app developers, but they empowered individuals to create their own tools and technologies, right?
Right.
That means that like a young person can have an idea aided by AI and then have no coding experience and build a video game, and then to be able to market that and develop a marketing plan based on AI. So what I tell my children, anybody who's willing to listen to me, there are 3 critical skills that you have to have in the 21st century.
Ooh, this is gonna be good.
So this is really important.
Yeah.
Number 1 is the ability to learn, to unlearn, to relearn. That everything that you want to learn is a query away in Google or ChatGPT. So the ability to formulate questions is a critical 21st century skill, because you just have to type in, how do I advise me on, and then you're going to get the answer. But you're going to get lots of answers, and the answers might not make sense. So skill number 2 is the ability to think critically, to be able to discern truth from fiction, to be able to compare and contrast, to do what I think is the highest form of reading is syntopical reading, to read multiple books on the same subject and to be able to formulate your own informed opinion. This is a critical skill, critical thinking. The third skill that I think is really important, and it doesn't seem like it, but your ability to use rhetoric, the ability to articulate your ideas in a persuasive way. So you can see that leaders, CEOs, executives, and political candidates, they command attention because they can formulate ideas into words that people can understand. I don't care what your political persuasion is, but you'll notice that the people who do the best aren't the ones that have the best ideas, but who can articulate ideas that we can understand. So if you're really heady like a professor, you're going to alienate and distance people. So you have to be able to do this. And we can see this in content creators. We can see this in politicians. We can see this in Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is heralded as one of the most transformative people in our generation.
Yeah.
What did Steve Jobs do? He didn't build the computers. He did not write the ad campaigns. He did not design the graphics and the user interface system. People often talk about him as one of the greatest marketers of our time.
Yeah.
What is marketing? The ability to capture and ignite people's passion and to be able to articulate in a way that they can understand. His whole thing about you can carry 1,000 songs in your pocket, summarize a really big complex idea. He didn't talk about how big the hard drive was, how many megahertz the processor was, how beautiful the interface was. He just said, here's something you might think of as a novel concept. And he summed up this thing. He did not invent the MP3 player. He did not invent MP3s. He didn't invent anything.
Nope.
But he put it together in such an elegant way that it ignited the imagination of people. And then all of a sudden, people previously who didn't even think about a portable MP3 player, all of a sudden wanted it and got in line to buy it. So you have to emphasize your communication skills, your ability to think and to articulate what it is that you're processing.
Yeah, and one other thing about him that you made me think of, Chris, was his insane attention to detail as well, with like packaging, right? Like everything, like every screw and every penetration. And he was so detailed. And the one thing you said that I had to write down, you said when you were talking about reading 2 books, what was that formula called, or syntopical?
It's called syntopical reading, syntopical, syntopical. So I've challenged this idea. I barely got through art school myself. I almost dropped out, right? So I'm not some educated academic person, and that's why I speak the way I speak. And I ask people who have multiple degrees, master's degrees, I said, what did you learn? Can you tell me what it is you've learned? Can you articulate that? And they have a hard time.
Yeah.
So I have this hypothesis, and maybe it's wrong, but I say if you want to be an expert or an authority in anything, go pick up the 5 most popular books on one subject and read them all. Read all 5 books. Don't read one book on marketing. Read 5 books, not from the same author, from different authors, so that you start to say, okay, if you create 3 cards, like index cards, right? Ideas that are universal to all 5 books, ideas that are different, ideas that I agree with, and you move them around, and you'll start to see like, okay, so I agree with 90% of these thoughts. Here's my own independent thinking. And then now I can be seen as an expert. And I believe if you do this, I'm not saying it's the same, but you can hold your own against somebody who has a master's degree in whatever subject they're studying. I'll give you the example. I create content. I'm able to build a following. So people start throwing labels on me that I don't feel like I deserve. They're saying something like, oh, this is Chris. He's a marketing guru. He's a marketing genius. And I'm not one because I don't even know anything about marketing.
Right.
So I go and I start reading books on marketing. I'm doing exactly what it is we talked about. I do my deep dive and I read with the intention not to consume, not to apply. I read with the intention to teach.
Interesting. So, okay, I'm going to dive in here a little bit just because I want to exactly get the playbook of how to do syntopical reading. Okay.
Yes.
So let's say we're talking advertising here. So I happen to know a few things about it. So Al Ries, Jack Trout, those are kind of like the marketing things. So I take several books, 5 books from people like that. I put them in, and do I start one, finish it, and write all the things at it? Or how am I applying this actual skill?
Okay. Let's say you pick up Al Ries and Jack Trout's book on positioning, the people who coined the word positioning.
Yeah.
It's a great book. It's like an OG book on positioning.
The best.
One of the best. One of the best. Okay. You read it and you're writing in it, you're underlining, you're pulling things. And what you should do at the end of every chapter, you should say, what can I apply? And if you want to go one layer deeper, what are actions or things I can teach other people to do? Okay, so you're making notes on index cards, and the way that I do it, and I have index cards over here, I write the big idea on the front, and I write any stories, facts, or data or studies that they reference on the back. This is kind of important. So you know the big idea, and then you have clues as to how to reverse engineer because these are the studies that they form. So you keep doing this. So you finish the book, so it's full of notes, highlighted things that you've circled, you write in the margins, and you've got now a stack of probably 16 cards at minimum. There's different systems that you can apply to say, like, what are the 16 ideas that you can get from the book? And you have to force yourself to fill out 16, or you have to force yourself to curate to only 16. Okay.
That's cool.
So you got one book now. You might want to read then a book from Seth Godin. Maybe you read This is Marketing or Permission Marketing or All Marketers Are Liars. I've read all 3. You take your notes. Again, you're filling it up. You might read something from Alan Didd, the one-page marketing plan. You might read something from somebody else, something that's not even related to marketing per se, but is a profoundly influential thing on marketing concepts. So by the time you finish 5 books, I think, I'm not calling you an expert, but I think you can hold your own in a conversation and debate with people and apply and teach these things.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think, but there are a lot of people that are really good at that skill. Like I have an ex-friend of mine, we'll call him. He could talk the talk with anybody, but he couldn't walk for nothing. Like, so then it comes into execution, right? You have the knowledge, and then how do you apply it, right? That's the key that a lot of people have a problem with, is taking that next action of applying that. So I think that's such a critical component of what you mentioned before as well. Like when it's funny because I mentioned that book, the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing was one of the first books that I was ever told to read by, at that point in time, I was a young intern at a radio station that I had gotten I could either do a thesis or an internship. And I talked to the promotions director, which is basically the marketing expert of that radio station. And I'm like, hey, these guys are picking on you. You should, it was another competing radio station. I'm like, they're talking bad about you. And he's like, when you're the big guy, you never pay attention to the little guy. And when you're the little guy, you attack the big guy. And I was like, oh, really? I'm like, and then, he would give me antidotes like that all the time. And I was like, where do you know all this stuff? What should I learn? He's like, read these books and read this book and read that book. And the reality is the answers are in the books. And I wrote a book called the Millionaire Mentorship, and I published it, self-published it and everything like that. It was funny because when I saw my book after it was done, it was a recipe for how to do everything, and it had no storytelling. And I was like, nobody's going to enjoy this book because it's like the how without the narration that tells my stories and my struggles and how it happened and how I was able to do that. And storytelling is such an important aspect of not only marketing, but learning. So Chris, man, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. You've been you're one of those guys where I'm like, I want to keep in touch with this guy. Like, I want to invite you to we do masterminds. I think you would be an excellent speaker at one of our masterminds coming up. I would love to have you on if you would consider that. I think that we could really go deep on here. In the constraint of time, I'm going to say I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing your story. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and helping me. For those of you guys who are listening right now, he literally spent like 10, 15 minutes with me, getting me on this new podcast software. And if you're trying to learn something, I can tell you just by the amount of knowledge that you dropped on this podcast alone, that he's the type of person who's going to be able to teach it to you. So definitely subscribe to your podcast, and definitely check out his education platform. You want to drop those names again real quick?
Yeah, you can find the company. It's called The Futur, and then Future, Futur. We have a podcast. We have a YouTube channel. But if you want to follow my own thoughts and the things, the pieces of content I create, you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok at the Chris Do, and Do is spelled D-O.
D-O, not the way I said it in the beginning of the podcast. Guys, make sure that you give Chris a 5-star review. Share this video with a friend and get learning on something right now, because as you can tell, like, just by taking action and learning something new, you will go through changes mentally that will make you more valuable to the marketplace. I know that when you started in 2012, you were way more valuable to the marketplace than you were when you started. I know I'm the same thing, and the future's here. Chris said it, and there's no going away from it. And you might as well be thinking in prosperous times versus being scared about what's coming up. So, Chris, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Troy.
Thanks, man. Peace. Awesome, dude. You're a G, man. You got a lot of cool things to share. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot. This is one, like, some of them I'm like, I got to re-listen to this because I didn't get that like 100%. But you dropped a lot of knowledge on me personally that I feel like I can apply. And I don't know if you do this because you said you're not taking on clients, but I really am looking for someone to build out my education component, because that is not my best skill set for sure. So if you know anybody, or if you're doing that, I would love to be pointed in that direction.
Yeah, why don't you connect with me? I think you have my email. You have my phone number. Send me an email. Tell me what it is you're trying to do with your education program. I know educational designers and consultants that can help you with whatever it is you're trying to do.
That'd be awesome, Chris. I really appreciate it. Truly, truly, truly.
All right.
Cool,
Take
man.
care.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you.